Ji Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is Shehzad Dhedhi, and my co-host is here, Imad Uddin Shaikh, who doesn't need any further introduction. So हम दोनों आपके पास LinkedIn पे ऐड हैं. If you have any questions, you can ask on LinkedIn as well as on YouTube. So our topic for today is about, are we headed towards global economic crisis? So again, the topic was suggested by Mr. Imad, and I think the name of the topic is very relevant, given that there are signs of global crisis as evident from the war in Middle East. So over to you, Imad. What would you like to talk about the topic, and how do you see this crisis, especially due to the war? And as we see some of the ways the country has threatened to block, and this might disturb the transportation of fuel. Over to you, Imad.
So I think we should start this topic on a bit of macro level. So rather than starting just from what would happen in Middle East, maybe we should look at how the world has been behaving for the past like decade or two few decades. So the rule of law has almost eradicated in the world. The global crisis and global conflicts have increased, and so now people are suggesting that it's a time for a new global order. And also because of the growth in technology, growth in capacity to do more things by the government, there is a case that governments around the world want more control. And unlike previously, let's say the previous world order was set in 1945 after World War, and it was based on the systems and capacities of the governments at that time. Now we are living in a much more globalized world where control can be exerted across countries, across nations, across continents, and so this is a very big difference since things were first settled. Similarly, the power dynamics of the world have changed significantly since the World War II. We now have China, we now have Russia, we now have Middle East, we now have India, and so all of these regions have a certain level of power that they can exert influence on the global decisions. Additionally, I think this monetary system that we have since probably 70s is now under pressure, at least to say the least. And so we were relying on petrodollar for the global system to work, and for that particular kind of system, we there had to be um, there had to be uh, all the sales of the oil had to be in dollars and not in any other currency. But because since the formation of BRICS, now a lot of countries are trading oil in currencies other than dollar. Specifically, uh, what was out of the loop was Venezuela and Iran, which were probably the largest producers of oil, and that were not following the 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 rules of the game that were set by the global elite. And so it was said by a lot of people that it was a long-standing war. It was coming for both of these countries, Venezuela as well as Iran. Venezuela was weaker, so it collapsed easier. Iran is stronger, so this is where the future of the world will be decided, and who wins, who controls, whose rules work in the future. So if United States fails to impose its own rules on Iran, and Iran continues to supply oil in different countries, then the dollar would continue to weaken, and as a result, American um, capacity to import goods can suffer. And so this is not just a individual risk or regional risk. This is an global risk, and this is what we're talking about, a major pattern here, not just what would happen in the next 2 or 3 months, or 5 or 6 months. But on top of that, the the pattern that we have for the next uh, few months is also very, very, very critical, because Strait of Hormuz has been blocked, and that was from where 20% of the global oil supply was coming. And so after that blockage, people are expecting that um, the oil price is going to rise significantly. Even though we already have a significant effect so far, people are expecting it to go over $100 or even more per barrel. And so these are the changes that are significantly affecting the global economy. People are saying that Japan relies 75% on the oil supply from this region. So this is not small. This is not trivial. And so any if any particular economy collapses, it would have a trickle down effect on other economies. And so we are living in a globalized world, so no one is isolated. On top of that, this particular global scenario is not limited to a particular country, and this is the biggest risk. So a lot of experts, including Jeffrey Sachs, including Professor Jiang, which we'll talk about soon, um, they are predicting that this would escalate into a regional war, maybe a world war, which we all should pray and hope should not does not happen. Why would it affect so many countries? First of all, because oil supply from China benefits significantly. Sorry, oil supply from Iran significantly benefits China as well as India, and so these people have stake in the game. Uh, but because of this war, significant amount of bases of US in the region would be destroyed. So the strength of the military strength of the United States in the Gulf region would not be as strong after the war as it is right now. So because the power dynamics would shift even significantly, we might expect the political implication of that as well. On top of that, if let's say there happens to be a political turmoil in Iran or in Saudi or in Gulf regions, that would be a very significant risk to not just those regions, but also to the global peace and also to the world economy, because all of the oil is coming from those particular regions. And so if they become a tool for proxy wars for other countries, this may lead to perpetual war. Even though so far what experts are saying is that the war on Iran is limited to missile attacks and air attacks. Not so far. It's a 2 or 3 or 4 weeks plan. But if let's say US is not fulfilling all these state objectives, which are very likely to be achieved in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, what would happen then? Because so far, US military does not have the capacity or the will to have force on ground, and if that does not happen, they would rely on probably a regional conflict to perpetuate or to hide the incapacity of achieving the objectives, possibly. And on top of it, Israel has its own different objectives. So, U.S. objective might be defined as uh, maintaining their own currency and maintaining their petrodollar, but Israel's objectives can be defined as maintaining hegemony in the region, and there's very, very fuzzy definition or fuzzy objective, because that hegemony can never be completely established. If Iran is threat today, tomorrow it might be Saudi for Israel's hegemony. And so if they want complete political power, they would continue to keep doing what they're doing. And so we cannot see an end to a conflict so easily, even though we can at least hope that the intensity of the war would fade a little bit in 3 or 4 weeks, I hope. What are your views on this, Mr. Shehzad? You're mute, I think.
I am unable to
Shehzad?
unmute myself. Yeah. Am I audible now? Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, I was thinking war uh, more relevant or more disruptive than any other war, like the Ukraine war or the Afghan war, or previously we had Iraq war. Why is this discussion more relevant? Why are global experts on economics are telling us about the global economic crisis? How come suddenly this war become a global issue instead of a regional issue? So I thought that it might impact us as well as some of the countries in the Middle East maximum. And even if that war is prolonged, why was the war between India and Pakistan was not as such important for the global economy as this war is? How how a war is suddenly has become so much important for the global context? We had so many wars in the past. We had already seen, or I think currently also witnessing about the Ukraine war, Israel Palestinian war continuously happening since so long. Afghan war, which ended in 2021, which started from 2001, right? So it's continued for around 20 years. Iraq war, it has been happening off and on basis. There have been attacks by America on Iraq. Why is this more important as far as Iran is concerned? How come Iran has become so much important? Is it just because of the Strait of Hormuz, or are there any other reasons?
There are several aspects of why this war is particularly more important than any other wars that have been happening for the last 10 or 15 years. First of all, the quantum of the war itself, which means the strength of the Iranian nation. So Iran is a much stronger country than Iraq was or Afghanistan was, like not even near to the strength of those countries. And so, which means both sides would be significantly damaged. And so we are probably seeing the kind of missile exchange that we have not seen in any war so far. Um, so this is the quantum of strength, first of all. Secondly, while Islam it's very nice to have you on the podcast. Um, so secondly, absolutely, absolutely. Uh, this particular region is very sensitive because all the global, a significant portion of global oil goes from here, and this is, probably um, the center of the world in terms of a lot of things, especially when we talk about energy, especially when we talk about the maintenance of U.S. hegemony in the world. So this is the central. Just look at how many US bases are there in the Gulf region, which means this is a place where US wants to have its bases. And so let's say the global structure, global power structure destabilizes, changes abruptly. This would have a trickle down effect on a lot of different countries. Certainly, India and Pakistan's interests are not very closely aligned with any other country, as they are currently aligned as the stakes in this war. So, if let's say the results or outcome of this war would significantly affect how China and India, what China, India, and Russia get, and what Israel and Europe and other Western countries get. So the outcomes of this war would have a significant effect on global regions, and therefore this is not a normal war between two individual countries. This is a war that is significantly different and significantly different in impact, significantly different in its sensitivity, and significantly different in its immediate effect, which means, aka the Strait of Hormuz, if it's closed, it would have completely massive effect on how the world economy would behave.
Okay. Uh, so, what would be the key concerns of any CXO, a CEO, CFO, or the board of directors in various countries, and especially those countries which might be heavily impacted, including Pakistan? What are your recommendations to the board of directors and CFOs as far as planning is concerned, as far as forecasting is concerned? What do you think?
I think risks depend significantly on what kind of business you are in. So if you have significantly more commodity risk, your business would be impacted by that. If you are if you're a digitized company, you might not have as much risk. Where if let's say the regulations change in certain countries, then your business might be impacted significantly. Um, and the risks, uh, again, when it comes to a lot of global variables, including currency exchange rates. You might have to hedge several different risks in order to maintain predictability. And if you have certain exports or imports to particular regions of the world which are being affected, you might lose a lot of sales. You might have significant risk as to your current supply chain, your current inventory, and what happens in the future. And if, for example, it all boils down into a large economic crisis for the world, then everyone is affected. Everyone would have to take a share of it. Uh, uh, to add to the discussion, I would like to. We have.
Yeah, feel free to add any video or anything if you want to.
Yeah, sure. I would like to share a video of a professor. This professor is right now being very famous around the globe because he has predicted a few very important occurrences that we are seeing right now. And he has a very famous YouTube channel called Predictive History. So he looks at the patterns of the history and he tries to he has his own framework of thinking. He creates his own series. And based on his series, he tries to predict what would happen. So just let me tell you, he predicted the Venezuela war before it happened. He predicted the Iran war before it happened, and he also predicted that US might be significantly disadvantaged in this war. Let me just look at the video and let's react to what they say.
Sure. Yeah,
All right, can you see my screen?
yeah.
Perfect.
Last semester, I'm making three big predictions, right? First is that Trump will win in November. Second is that United States will go to war against Iran. And the third big prediction is that the United States will lose this war, which will forever change the global order.
So obviously that last one is the only one that has not yet come to fruition. Is quite a stunning prediction. Do you stand by it, and what have you seen so far that leads you to?
So before we continue, let me just also tell you beforehand that one of the admiral of the U.S. Army beforehand told that they do not have the missile stock or the capacity to achieve the stated goals of the war, which is regime change. And so we might see. So this is a weird thing that if your own army people all of a sudden say that we are not going to win this war, what would the morale be of the political establishment, political structure, and all the military establishment? Uh, and so yeah, so this is a very significant thing that if your own army ditches you and asks you to not go to the war, then how can you properly win the war or expect it to win the war? By the way, I heard that President Donald Trump had fired that particular admiral who did that press conference and made that statement. So we can also see, which means that this is internal tug of war between what the U.S. Army wants and what global interests or global power elites want. So which is a very strange thing to say. And a very famous professor, Jeffrey Sachs, who predicted the war one day before the war. He said tomorrow there's going to be war. He's a very famous professor. He said that U.S. public does not want the war. U.S. Army does not want the war. U.S. Trump voters do not want the war. But Netanyahu wants the war, and therefore there would be war. And so this is a prediction by Professor Jeffrey Sachs one day before the war. And according to him, it's a long-standing Mossad and CIA project, and where they were planning for a long time. And so this might, if you talk in probabilities from what we are seeing and what experts are suggesting, US will have a significant disadvantage in the region. For Israel, it's two-way. It could be both. It could be really good thing. The outcome could be really good for Israel, or it could be really bad. It's not, I think, neutral for Israel. But for US, it's very likely that there would be significantly disadvantage in the Gulf region. Let's continue watching this video and see what Professor have to say further.
Sort of stand firm in that conclusion.
So, given my analysis of how the war is progressing, I think that Iran has many more advantages over the United States. The reality is that right now, it's a war of attrition between the United States and Iran, and the Iranians have been preparing 20 years for this conflict. In their eschatology, in their religion, this is a war against the great Satan. They've had many practice runs. Last June was a 12-day war when the Iranians were able to examine and analyze the strike capacities of both the Israelis and the Americans. And they've had a lot of time, 8 months, to prepare fully for this new attack. They, through their proxies, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Shia militias, have been able to really grasp the American mentality, and now they have a pretty good strategy of how to weaken and ultimately destroy the American empire. So what the Iranians are doing is they're waging war against the entire global economy. And so they are striking the GCC countries. And not only are they striking GCC countries, American bases, they're going after the critical energy infrastructure of these bases. They blocked off the Strait of Hormuz. And eventually, they will go after the water desalination plants, which is the lifeblood of these nations because they don't have fresh water supply. In fact, the water desalination plants provides 60% of the GCC's water supply. So if a drone, and these drones cost $50,000, if they wiped out a desalination plant in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and it's a city of 10 million people, right? They'd be out of water in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks. And right now, the Iranians have de facto closed off the Strait of Hormuz, and the GCC gets 90% of its food from the Strait of Hormuz.
So, Shehzad, what do you think about the possibility of the war escalating to an extent that the energy infrastructure and even the water infrastructure would be at stake significantly? So far we have heard that there have been a few attacks on refineries, but there are dubious news that it was not deliberate or something like that. But if, let's say, the energy infrastructure is very, very properly attacked, or the water infrastructure is attacked, then this would not just be a contained war, I believe, and this is something that we do not want in any scenario.
So actually, my first question would be whether there is a quote, everything is fair in love and war. So my question is whether is it correct, if is it real that we can do everything if we are in the state of war, number one. Number two, Iran is an Islamic country, right? So there have been some criticisms as well on Iran, as why is it attacking our neighboring Muslim countries. So to that, people respond that since their air bases were used against Iran, that's why Iran is attacking those countries. Now, whether Iran attacks on the water salination plants or it blocks or continuously keep it blocked, Strait of Hormuz, who is going to suffer? So which means Iran is going to threaten the world, including Middle East, that they can do this and do this. So actually, they want. So it means that they don't want to continue the war for the longer period of time. That's why they are giving these threatening calls. If there was no threatening call, I think the situation might be different. So I'm actually thinking aloud, and I have a lot of questions. I don't have proper answers to these questions, but I have a lot of questions. And I'm still thinking why this war broke out. What was the reason? why US involved itself in this war, which should be between Iran and Israel actually, right? So what was the reason USA stepped in? And what is the reason USA used air bases of all other Muslim countries? So this could be a scenario where the war is not between Iran and Israel, but it is actually a war between a certain region, or as some of us call it, between Muslims and Israel, as supported by Jewish and Christian lobby. So I don't have answer to that. There are some speculations, and there have been discussions whether it is a war between Iran and Israel, or if it is a war between Muslim countries. And if it is that, if this hypothesis, or if this theory is actually relevant, then the question is why other countries are supporting Israel or USA instead of Iran. I don't have answer to that. So there are a lot of questions actually I have, and the question is, in my childhood, we have been listening to the radio regarding Iraq and Iran war, as well as Kuwait war. So, excuse me. Yeah, so there have been discussions in the past as well regarding these kind of situations, and uh, I would be surprised as why these Middle East wars have been continuing for the last 50 years. Maybe. There have been always been some kind of war in this region. And I'm worried about the future generations, as well as future generations of the people in Middle East. Whether the wars would be continuing in future as well. What is the future of our kids, whether we are in Middle East or we are in nearby countries? No war has actually taken place in USA itself, right? So USA is involving in various kinds of wars throughout the world, which are not in its own region. Why is that so? So USA is also all is safe from all the wars. I'm not sure whether these kind of 9/11 attacks have actually impacted USA much, and whether that attack was actually from Afghanistan or not. So why is it so that the life of the people in Middle East is always at stake? Why is that? It's not just Gaza or Palestine. Now it is this entire Middle East. So these are my questions. I don't have any answer to that. Do you want to comment on any of these things?
Yeah, surely. When the just to mention, Shehzad, when there's split screen, can we have the full screen from top to bottom, just like we had before? Um, and if you're there, can we see you as well? It would be nice to have the split screen and all the time, even if you can mute yourself. Um, because if I see you, I would know that you are here listening to me, and it would be a better experience for myself. Yeah, thank you. And can we have the full screen live? Yeah, that's exactly what we want. Perfect. So yeah, first of all, I don't think that this is a visionary or ideological war from the U.S. perspective. I think for U.S. it's a very practical war. They have certain interest in the region. They have certain interest in the global world order, and a lot of things are slipping from under them. If let's say the BRICS successfully create an alternative currency to US dollars, and US dollar does not have the value, remember United States is not as industrialized as it used to be, like, before 70s, right? And so US is almost completely financialized. US does not have the capacity to export its goods because its dollar is so strong, and China is so cheap. So to be relevant in the world, it has to keep its dollar or currency relevant, because for other countries to earn dollar, they have to earn it. They have to sell their products to earn dollars. For United States, they can simply print it, and this has been good for the United States for a very long time. But in this changing world, now when there are competing powers who can have their own currencies, this can be a significant risk to the United States, because they have been completely relying on their dollar, which has the power as a reserve currency around the world. If it loses that power, the United States would be in a very bad position. And so the United States have to find a way to maintain their currency as a world reserve currency, and they have to find a way to make sure that their power balance does not shift significantly to affect their economies and their decision-making rights. And so for US, I think it's a very practical war. For Israel, I think it's a completely different story. It's really an ideological war. Right now, the government in Israel is a far right government, far right government. It's a genocidal state, and they are trying to they have expansionary mentality as far as you can see. They're expanding into West Bank. They're expanding into Gaza. They have probably taken some territories from Syria as well. And so to maintain their strength, to maintain their rogue behavior, they need absolute power in the region, and to that there are certain risks or um, certain hindrances, and Iran is one of them. So for Iran, it's not a war against between Muslims and Christians or Jews. For Iran, it's a war for their survival, um, for their own stability, for their own to survive or to keep the system running. And so if this war tries to change their regime, their own identity, their own system, their own
So
government, none of them
this
would remain.
war, sorry, if this war is about the survival of Iran, if Iran thinks like that, does Israel also think like that? That if it is the survival of Israel, or if there are any actually hidden agendas behind this war?
I don't think they have any hidden agendas. They have very openly stated agendas. So if you listen to, so basically, their claim is that this land is theirs because it was promised in the Bible, in the Old Testament, and but the region that was promised in the Old Testament was not the current Israel. It was much bigger than that. It was from probably Euphrates River to probably Nile, and so it's a very large region, and it includes a lot of Middle East. And so recently there was a scandal from, I think, US administrator in Israel. So if you know Tucker Carlson, he is very aggressive in interviewing pro-Israel politicians in the United States. And so he interviewed him and asked him that you are talking about their right to the land because it's in the Old Testament. So, but in Old Testament, he argued he attacked that argument in two ways. First of all, he said that most of the people who are current Jews are not ethnic Jews. They 80% of them are probably Europeans, right? So, and therefore genetic testing is illegal in Israel. That was one of his argument. I'm not entirely sure about what the population demographics or ethnic distribution of the current Israeli population is, but his argument was that the Muslim population is more ethnically Jew than the Jew population, and the Jew population is more ethnically
Yeah, very relevant.
yeah, yeah. So the
Yeah,
right, and he specifically
ethnically,
mentioned and he specifically mentioned Benjamin Netanyahu, and he said that Netanyahu is not his real name; it's a made-up name. His father's name was something else, and so he's not even Semite, probably according to Tucker Carlson. And then the second thing he said that if you are saying that this based on this ethnic background, if they have the right to the land, and the land what you're talking about is much bigger than what they currently have. So would you be okay if they had all the land? And so the U.S. officials said it would be fine if they had it all, and this triggered reaction from a lot of governments in the world, including Saudi.
नहीं, I couldn't be able to understand that. मतलब मैं अगर कोई बेवकूफ़ ही होऊंगा जो मैं ऐसी प्रोफेसीज पे जाऊंगा, मैं सोचूंगा कि ये ऐसा लिखा हुआ है. दूसरा ये कि मैं अगर एक नस्ल से हूँ, से मैं एक जीव हूँ, एक यहूदी हूँ, और मैं समझता हूँ या मेरे पास ऐसा कोई प्रूफ है कि जो मेरे एंसेस्टर्स थे वो से मोसेस से हैं, या वो जो है ना वो बनी इसराइल से हैं, which is actually offspring of Jacob, right? यही है ना कॉन्सेप्ट, तो कि याकूब की जो औलाद है वो इजराइली कौन है? इजराइली वही है ना जो याकूब की औलाद से है. मुस्लिम बिलीफ तो यही है Jubilee नियर टू दैट वही होगा। तो उसमें से बहुत सारे लोग तो अब वो रहे ही नहीं, उसमें से बहुत सारे लोग तो क्रिश्चियन हो गए ना। After Jesus Christ, a lot of Israelis, Bani Israel, accepted Christianity, right? वो तो क्रिश्चियन हो गए, मेजोरिटी और क्रिश्चियन आई बिलीव। और फिर बहुत सारे जो थे वो क्रिश्चियन से, यहूदी से वो मुसलमान हो गए। तो वो जो अगर मैं उसमें बात करूं कि एथनिसिटी क्या है, तो एथनिसिटी तो वो तो चंद लोग ही रह गए ना जो कि एक्चुअली ज्यूस हैं। तो क्या सिर्फ ज्यूस हैं वही एथनिसिटी है? जो प्रॉमिस लैंड था वो किसके लिए था? प्रॉमिस लैंड तो वो है ना जो कुरान में भी आता है उसके हवाले से। तो वो तो मूसा अलैहि सलाम को कहा ना कि इस फलस्तीन में दाखिल हो जाओ। तो एक्चुअली तो वही था ना लैंड। तो मूसा के जो फॉलोअर्स थे जिनके लिए वो प्रॉमिस लैंड था, राइट? तो वो जो मूसा के फॉलोअर थे वो आज कौन है? हु इज बनी इसराइल टुडे? क्या वो बनी इसराइल जो है वो क्या सिर्फ ज्यूज हैं, या वो क्रिश्चियंस भी हैं, या वो मुस्लिम्स भी हैं? तो वो तो पूरा सीन ही चेंज हो गया। तो वो कुछ चंद लोग हैं, वो क्या इतने मतलब बेवकूफ़ हैं एक तरह से, जो समझते हैं कि यार ये प्रॉमिस लैंड था और अब जो रह गए ज्यूज सिर्फ उनके लिए है, और ये जो है ना वो ग्रेटर इसराइल हमें चाहिए। व्हाट इज रबिश? आई डोंट बिलीव। ये थ्योरीज है ना एक्चुअली। तो सारे मुस्लिम की भी इसी
This
तरह
is
की
not a
थ्योरीज होती है, मुस्लिम की भी थ्योरीज होती हैं, और आई थिंक जूरिश की भी थ्योरीज ही हैं। आपका क्या टेक है इसके ऊपर?
I think this is not a theory and this is not a prophecy. This is purely a political argument. And when we talk about politics, it's very relevant in current day politics in the United States and even in the European countries. So when people argue that what they are doing they are creating an apartheid state, they are doing injustices, the only resort their politicians have to comfort their own audience is to say that they had the promised land and therefore we should protect it. It has nothing to do with what religion says. It has nothing to do with prophecy. It has nothing to do with being a theory. It's all about politics, and this is how they satisfy their political
So what I understand
demands.
that is all about acquiring more power, right? पॉलिटिक्स फॉर व्हाट? पॉलिटिक्स दो चीज़ों के लिए होती है। एक इकोनॉमिक्स के लिए होती है, यानी मनी, ठीक है, या दूसरा होती है पावर के लिए। अच्छा, एक मेरा छोटा सा सवाल है, व्हाट इज मोर इम्पोर्टेंट, मनी एंड एसेट्स और पावर? छोटा सा सवाल, रैपिड
Power,
फायर।
power,
पावर। सो
power.
विच मीन्स जो आज जो पॉलिटिक्स हो रही है इज ऑल अबाउट हु इज मोर पावरफुल, या दूसरे अल्फाज में मैं कहूँ इन उर्दू, कौन बड़ा चौधरी है, राइट? सो इसराइल को ये शौक है इस वक्त कि उतनी सारी जो भी डेवलपमेंट हुई और इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट हुई ना इसराइल में, आज भी मुझे लगता है कि जो दुनिया में जो सबसे ज़्यादा रिसर्च होती है उनमें से एक कंट्री इसराइल है, राइट? आपकी जितनी भी एआई डेवलपमेंट है, वन ऑफ द कंट्रीज इसराइल जहाँ पे एआई की डेवलपमेंट है, एजुकेशन में बहुत सारी चीज़ों में देखें वो आगे निकल गए हैं। इकोनॉमिक्स की बात करें, टेक्नोलॉजी की बात करें, आज जो मैं दुनिया भर में इवन यूएस में भी जो बेस्ट स्कॉलर्स मिलते हैं, जो सबसे ज़्यादा नोबेल प्राइज विनर्स मिलते हैं, वो जूइश होते हैं। कहीं ना कहीं वो जो है ना, या तो जूइश होते हैं या कहीं ना कहीं वो इसराइल से या उनके एंसेस्टर्स होते हैं। तो एक वो वाली पावर तो है उनके पास एज फार एज इकोनॉमिक्स कंसर्न। सो नाउ अब प्रॉब्लम ये है कि क्या वो ये चाहते हैं कि मिडिल ईस्ट में भी वो सबसे बड़ी पावर है। तो अब उनके लिए तो कोई भी कंट्री है जो कि अदर देन देम है, इंक्लूडिंग पैलेस्टीन हो या दूसरी अरब कंट्रीज हो, लेबनान हो या ईरान हो या और दूसरी कंट्रीज हैं, तो वो तो फिर सभी उसके दुश्मन हो गए ना। इसमें सूनर और लेटर बाकी तमाम कंट्रीज भी सफर करेंगी, वो इस जंग का पार्ट बनेगी, यस और नो? सो विच मीन्स कि अभी ऐसी क्या चीज़ है जो बाकी मिडिल ईस्ट की कंट्रीज हैं वो रियलाइज नहीं कर रही, जो कि ईरान ने रियलाइज कर लिया, या पाकिस्तानियों को सब पता होता है। तो क्या जो पाकिस्तानियों को थ्योरीज जो आप बता रहे हैं, जिसपे इतने अरसे से हम पता नहीं कब से बातें कर रहे हैं, क्या वो सऊदी अरब को नहीं पता? क्या वो यूएई को नहीं पता? क्या वो कतर को नहीं पता? उनको नहीं पता कि उनका असल दुश्मन कौन है, या उनको नहीं पता कि असल मसला पावर का क्या चल रहा है? वो क्यों इसराइल का साथ दे रहे होते हैं? ये इस पे आपका क्या टेक है?
Um, I think this is very clear in a lot of circles in across the world. And if you have listened to a recent interview by an ex Saudi Shura member, he was very vocal against what Israel is doing in the region. And according to him, a lot of things that happen in Sudan, in Yemen, uh, and a lot of the in Libya were being executed by Israel via UAE. So that was his take on what's going on right now in their region, and a lot of Gulf regions which are burning right now, which have a lot of like Libya had a government. According to that particular person which I'm talking about, he was the extra member from Saudi. He said there was a after Qaddafi there was a proper government, UN recognized government in Libya, but some countries conspired and funded some very wrong people in that particular country and empowered them, gave them weaponry, and even sent their own planes to attack on the UN recognized government to topple the government uh, and ruin the system. And similar things are happening in Sudan. A very wrong person is being funded. He's getting a lot of terrorism, a lot of massacre in Sudan, and they are being supported by certain countries. And this is what not my take. This is what that particular council member was saying. If you want, should I just try to share that video as well? It would be really
Sure.
interesting for this particular podcast.
Is it the same? Is it the same which is on stage right now, or is it some other video?
No, I'm talking about a Saudi leader talking about all these
Okay,
matters.
so can you change here on the same link instead of
Uh,
resharing?
I'll have to reshare because I have to search it first
Okay.
and then.
श्योर 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 कैरी ऑन सो राइट नाउ फिर जब तक आप ये शेयर करते हैं तो मेरा एक ये सवाल है जो कि किसी हद तक आपने आंसर किया है लेकिन मैं अभी भी सोच रहा हूँ कि मैं अपने कुछ शॉर्ट टर्म बेनिफिट्स के लिए इसराइल को सपोर्ट करता हूँ तो एक तो ये चीज़ हो गई ना अच्छा ये कभी भी हमेशा कंटिन्यूइंग होती है मिडिल ईस्ट में वॉर बचपन से चलती आ रही है और हमेशा से मुझे एक ये चीज़ नहीं समझ आती कि जब भी यूएस में प्रॉब्लम हो रहा होता है डॉलर के क्राइसिस होते हैं हमेशा कोई ना कोई जंग छेड़ता है यूएसए या जंग छिड़ जाती है और यूएस जो है ना किसी तरह से उसका बेनिफिशियरी होकर निकल आता है जब भी कभी भी हमें लगता है ना कि अब यूएस के कंडीशंस बुरे हैं अभी भी कुछ इस तरह की चीज़ें चल रही थी हमें नज़र आ रहा था कि चाइना इज इमर्जिंग एज अ सुपर पावर तो ऐसा क्यों है हमेशा से कि जब भी कोई ऐसी सिचुएशन आती है यूएस कहीं ना कहीं वॉर स्टार्ट करता है एंड देन यूएस रीएस्टैब्लिशेस इटसेल्फ एज अ सुपर पावर सो ये बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ है मेरे लिए ये मैं पिछले कोई 50 सालों से मुझे ऐसा नजर आ रहा है हमेशा कोई ना कोई ऐसी चीज़ें होती हैं यूएस किसी वॉर में चला जा रहा है और यही क्या वजह है यूएस में के वॉर में आने की लेकिन अगर मैं दूसरी तरफ यूएस के अपने पब्लिक के देखूं उनके अपने सेनेट्स और वहाँ पे देखूं तो वहाँ के जो अपने उनके जो पार्लियामेंटेरियंस हैं या सेनेट्स हैं या उनकी पब्लिक है वो खुद क्रिटिसाइज कर रही होती है इन सारे स्टेप्स को प्रेसिडेंट को तो ऐसा क्या है कि वो प्रेसिडेंट ऐसे सिचुएशन ऐसे डिसीजंस खुद ले रहा होता है जबकि उसकी जो आवाम है वो उसके साथ नहीं खड़ी होती है
To answer that, we'll have to go a bit deeper into some conspiracy theories, but it's not no longer a theory because uh, recently we had a very huge scandal of Epstein files being released, right? And so recently, a new interview came to surface, which was 3 hours long of Jeffrey Epstein. And so he explained how one of his friends, Rockefeller, created a triage commission. So normally people would call them Illuminati or secret societies. That's what he's calling a triage commission. And he said it has three kind of people: people in power, people who are strong politicians, and people with money. And the reason to create that commission was that the political system is very unstable. People only come for 4 years in the United States and they go away. And so that particular commission was not only limited to US, it probably spanned three continents, he said, right? And so that's where people used to sit and make all the decisions of how the world would be run. And that's the world we live in. This is all the conspiracy flavor have been taken out of it, and now we can see the real picture. And so you can see the person saying himself that this is how the world works. There are such commissions, there are such groups of people who decide above and over the government, because governments are run by people. People are stupid according to them. The government policy system is very unstable because every 4 years you cannot change the policy. You don't have to. You need to have. Let's say I'm a very strong businessman. I'm a multi-billion dollar. I need certain consistency in policies. I would need some people. I would befriend some people. I would need some platform where I can converse my concerns with people, and I can rely on their decisions and rely on what they would say, because I want predictability of the future. So this is how world works apparently. And I've also found a video. If you want, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
I
please,
probably
please,
think this
please
is the
share.
one.
Please
So
share.
it's a short of 1.5 minutes, and it's long of 1 hour and 44 minutes. Which one would you want?
The shorter one, or any extract if you want to
Oh,
share.
of course.
You can just bring us there, whatever you want to share.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you shared?
Give me a second. Yes. So the title of the video is Abu Dhabi is Israel's Trojan horse.
Okay.
That's the title of
Interesting.
the video.
Interesting.
Our president will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. We sought repeatedly to make a deal, but Iran refused, and we can't take it anymore.
Trump didn't justify a war with Iran on the grounds of
Excuse me. I think this was a glitch here.
With all respect to Abu Dhabi is a small district of Riyadh.
The Emirates and the Israelis are now very, very close allies. How does Saudi Arabia see that alliance? What is to Saudi Arabia of that specific alliance?
What we have been watching Abu Dhabi doing in many Arab countries, and certainly in Yemen, is an implementation of this strategy. They were really, as I call them, the Trojan horse of the Israeli ambitions.
So you were saying that why Saudi doesn't know, why the Gulf countries do not know. I think the people in government all over the world, especially in the Gulf region, are very aware of what's going on. So let's continue this video.
Yep. Let me continue.
Toppling down of Gaddafi. Libya at the time needed unity, needed reconstruction, needed peace. And the Abu Dhabi entity went there to destroy all these ambitions. They supported Haftar, who was a separatist, who had no legal or even moral justification to do what he did. But they threw their weight behind him, supported him financially, militarily, and they even sent their jets to bomb the legitimate government that was recognized by the UN and by the entire world. And then they moved to all the other countries. They went to Sudan, they went to Yemen, they went to Somalia.
Yeah.
And so this is very interesting, that because we now have access to a lot of powerful people around the globe, we can have their take on all the different issues. And so things are, we don't have to keep wondering. We can now simply listen from people who are directly in contact with these people, or with the real matters, and we can gain access, gain insights from them, and eventually form our own worldview of how the world's looking right now. We don't need to rely on conspiracy theories or just wondering what's happening. But I'm surprised, to say the least, as to how many of these conspiracy predictions or conspiracy theories had some grounding in reality as well. So I was surprised to learn that.
Yeah, I got it. But if I am UAE or if I am any Middle Eastern Muslim country, why would I support Israel in doing so? Which means I see my own short-term benefits, right? And
No,
again,
I think
yeah.
please
Carry on.
carry on.
No, you carry on, please.
I think for UAE, it's not about short-term benefits. I think UAE's long-term benefits are very strongly aligned with Israel. It's the same. The same stands for India.
How? Please support your argument.
What kind of conflict would there be between the economic interests of UAE and Israel? You suggest me.
So, which means it is not about Greater Israel, right? Even it is not about Jew versus Muslim, right? It's only about a country's specific situation. If any country has oil, then USA has interest on that country, right? If a country does not have any oil or any assets, then US has no interest to attack on that country, is it?
See, if a country has promised or has decided to be your supporter forever, why would that country not be your friend? I'm just asking. So if we talk about Saudi, Saudi has its own. Let's talk about Saudi now, for example. Saudi has a very strong population, a very strong culture, and a lot of things that Israel does, they create pressure on Saudi governments because of their own population. So therefore, the strategic interests of Israel and Saudi are very difficult to align. Make sense? But for UAE, the situation is completely different. They have a very small population. They have shaped their country, they have changed their culture to a point where they can choose any policy they want. And I think has been their policy for a very long time to be more loyal to US than US themselves. And now they are doing the same with Israel. And so I don't think they have anything to lose in this particular strategic framework.
Okay, so let me move on. Rather than jumping here and there, there are a lot of theories, conspiracy theories, discussions, and things like that. So I don't want to go deeper into those things. My question would be, uh, how a CXO should be prepared uh, in a situation like this, current situation as well as in future if any other war breaks out, if there further participation in this war from few other countries, then how you see a CXO or CFO should be prepared in that kind of situation. So is it just only, for example, if it is the rate of oil is around it was around $80 per barrel, right? Now it is gone up. So there are predictions that it may go up around $100 or maybe more or maybe $150. So how should we prepare? Whether we are in Pakistan or whether we are in Middle East or India or China or some other countries, how is it going to affect me as a CFO? What's your take on that?
We've already talked about the immediate effects of it. For example, CFOs or CEOs might have to worry about their production planning. They might have to worry about their supply chain, which might
Yeah.
break out in certain regions. They might have to worry about commodity price risk, and they might have to worry about hedging their risk. And if they are really exposed to the oil, then they really have to better plan how they would work with the pricing, with the hedging, and what the industry is doing right now. So if the industry is hedging their risk for oil prices, they would have to do the same as well. So this is something on immediate basis, but on long term basis, they might have to look at what the strategic direction of their company might be. For example, they are planning an expansion, should really expand right now in the next year, 2 or 3. If we're expecting a very huge demand, are they now seeing a global downturn, coming downturn, and should they really revise their estimates or budgets for that? So this is something that's on a broader level or on a longer term horizon.
So in any kind of this situation, even during COVID, we observed that there were certain gainers and there were certain losers, right? So who do you think, or which companies do you think could be gainers in this situation, and who do you think might be the losers in this situation?
It's very hard to say. I think initially
Hmm.
a lot of derivatives would be sold. A lot of financial companies would benefit from it. Um,
Hmm.
those people, like, honestly, I do not have a good idea of the dynamics of the oil market, how it
Okay,
works.
let's discuss.
They
Let's discuss we don't have any certain answer, but for example, my answer would be that anyone who is more into technology or into artificial intelligence would be a gainer, right? It also happened during COVID, post COVID. All those who are dependent on oil might suffer, right? Any kind of business which is dependent on oil, any kind of business which is more dependent on supply chain, right? The business which involves export might be affected, imports might be affected, right? Your country's import bill on oil might go up, which may also distort the food prices as well as transportation prices. But who would be the gainer? A technology company might be a gainer, right? An online system might be a gainer. So there could be situations like your education also goes online for certain time, like we also witnessed in COVID. So all the platforms involved in education on online platform are the gainers, right? So there could be situations like we can segregate who could be the potential winners and who could be the potential losers. Likewise, if we can do this analysis, we can do an stock exchange analysis as well. Which stocks might go up and which stocks might go up, and we can build this in our long-term strategy. So my question is, it many of these things happen in the past, right? And we can also predict certain wars in the future as well. Why is it this so that some of the companies or some of the owners or maybe the governments have not or AI-based business, and why we are more into brick and mortar or old style businesses so far? Two comments.
Uh, I'm sorry, I lost you for a minute. Can you please repeat your question?
जी जी, मैं आपसे ये कह रहा था कि ऐसी सिचुएशंस जो हैं वो बार बार हमने देखी हैं और आज शायद आइंदा भी देखते रहेंगे, और हमें पता है कि इस तरह की सिचुएशन में हमेशा गेनर्स कौन होते हैं और लूजर्स कौन होते हैं, मोस्ट लाइकली विनर्स एंड मोस्ट लाइकली लूजर्स, राइट? सो जहां हम देखते हैं हमारे अपनी कंट्री में भी, हमारी अपनी कंट्री की पॉलिसीज भी, और इवन जो बिजनेसमैन है, ऐसा क्यों नहीं हो रहा कि हम उसको देखें कि वो एआई बिजनेस की तरफ, टेक्नोलॉजी के बिजनेस की तरफ ज़्यादा मूव करें इंस्टेड ऑफ ब्रिक एंड मोटर बिजनेस, जो कि डिपेंडेंट होता है इस तरह की चीज़ों पे, ऑयल पे या इस तरह के नेचर ऑफ बिजनेस पे. व्हाई इज इट सो? एंड आई सी दैट इवन जो आपके ऑयल एक्सपोर्टर्स हैं, मेजर ऑयल एक्सपोर्टर्स, खासतौर पे आपको उनकी जितनी एक्सपोर्ट है वो बेशक ह्यूज होंगी. फॉर एग्जांपल मैंने लास्ट ईयर के अंदर देखा था, सऊदी एक्सपोर्ट्स ऑयल की थी अराउंड $150 बिलियन, और उससे ज़्यादा एक्सपोर्ट जो है वो हमारी नेबर कंट्री की थी आईटी एक्सपोर्ट से. सो जो आपका ऑयल था, ऑयल से ज़्यादा बेहतर तो आपका आईटी एक्सपोर्ट हो गया ना आज की दुनिया में. तो क्या हम नहीं सीख पा रहे अपने नेबर कंट्रीज से? हमारे बिजनेसमैन वो क्यों नहीं आ रहे आईटी बिजनेस में, एआई बिजनेस में, जबकि आपको पता है कि ये सारे ऑयल और ये जो दूसरे बिजनेसेस हैं आर मोर रिस्कियर देन द टेक्नोलॉजी बिजनेस. हालांकि एक वक्त था जब टेक्नोलॉजी बिजनेस को एक रिस्की बिजनेस समझा जाता था. .com कल्चर जो था ना, एक बबल, तो लोग .com को अवॉइड करते थे ना. तो ऐसा क्यों है कि आज लोग नहीं आ रहे एआई बेस्ड बिजनेस से टेक्नोलॉजी बिजनेस? अगर मैं इमर्जिंग मार्केट्स की बात करूं इंक्लूडिंग पाकिस्तान.
Well, a lot of people say that right now AI is also in bubble, so we do not know what to predict from that. And especially when we talk about AI's bubble, we're talking about larger companies such as OpenAI, Grok, and everything, and especially the chip making companies like Nvidia, which has now probably crossed $5 trillion in market cap. So this is crazy amount of growth in.
नहीं तो
what
ये अभी
AI is
तक बबल
doing.
कैसे है?
And
मुझे तो मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा कि जब इतने हरसे से हम देख रहे हैं, .com भी एक बबल कहा जाता था ना, तो वो आज देख लेना आपकी फॉर्च्यून 500 सारी तो चेंज हो गई. मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा अभी भी बबल है. पिछले को लास्ट 25 ईयर्स में, और जो 80s और 90s से जो पढ़े लिखे लोग हैं, आप देखें ना, फॉर्च्यून 500 तो चेंज हो गई. जो हमने किताबों में भी पढ़ा मैनेजमेंट की, वो जनरल इलेक्ट्रिक और कोडेक और पता नहीं क्या चीजें हमें पढ़ाते थे, वो सारी कंपनीज ही चेंज हो गई ना. अब तो आपकी टॉप कंपनीज ही डिफरेंट है. तो वो भी उस वक्त हम सुनते थे .com है, आज भी हम सुन रहे हैं एआई बबल है. तो भाई क्या हमें नजर नहीं आ रही चीजें? हमें नजर नहीं आ रहा कि दुनिया शिफ्ट हो गई है. हम अभी तक वही, एक तो मुझे ये नहीं समझ में आती, हम हमेशा ना वॉर भी होती है तो कंस्पिरेसी थ्योरी में होते हैं, हमें वो वॉर बिटवीन ईरान एंड इजराइल नजर नहीं आती है, एफेक्ट्स नजर नहीं आते. हम उसमें ना पीछे से जा रहे होते हैं कि बाइबल में ऐसा लिखा हुआ है तो फला है, तो वो एक हाइपोथेसिस पूरा एक वो क्रिएट होता है, और पूरी एक कंस्पिरेसी अगेन. इसी तरह जो अभी वॉर हुई है, तो इसके ऊपर भी हम कह रहे हैं चूंकि एप्स्टीन फाइल थी, और दिस माइट बी राइट, आई डोंट नो, बट चूंकि एप्स्टीन फाइल थी उसमें सीक्रेट्स आ गए थे, और बिल गेट्स और बिल क्लिंटन और ये लोग एक्सपोज हो गए थे. लेकिन ट्रम्प साहब की अभी तक कोई वीडियो नहीं आई थी. तो ट्रम्प साहब चूंकि उनकी अपनी कोई नंगी वीडियो ना आ जाए, तो इसलिए उन्होंने ईरान पे अटैक कर दिया ताकि वो अवॉइड कर लें किसी ऐसे स्कैंडल को, राइट? तो ये भी तो बातें हो रही है ना, ये आपका मेन स्ट्रीम मीडिया भी यही चला रहा है. सो बहरहाल मेरा क्वेश्चन अभी ये नहीं है आपसे कि कॉन्स्पिरेसी थ्योरीज के हवाले से, मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि हम क्यों शिफ्ट नहीं हो रहे उन बिजनेसेस के ऊपर रादर देन के उन बिजनेसेस पे कि जो कि ज़्यादा रिस्की हैं, जो कि वॉर्स की वजह से अफेक्ट होते हैं, और ये तो बार बार है, आइंदा फ्यूचर में भी वॉर होती रहेंगी। अगर आप मुझसे पूछें तो मैं तो बचपन से देखता आ रहा हूँ, मैं तो पैदा ही उस जमाने में हुआ हूँ जब वॉर्स ये चल रही थी, आपके अफगान वॉर चल रही थी, रशिया वॉर चल रही थी, फिर वो इराक की वॉर हो गई, फिर कुवैत की वॉर हो गई। वॉर्स तो हम बचपन से देख, वॉर इज नॉट अ न्यू थिंग फॉर अस, राइट? इंडिया पाकिस्तान का भी चलता ही रहता है ना, 1965, 1971, फिर वो कारगिल वॉर, और अभी ये रिसेंट जो चीज़ें हुई हैं अभी आपके मई में हुई थी लास्ट ईयर, तो हम तो हमेशा से वही देखते आ रहे हैं। तो हम क्यों अपने आप को प्रिपेयर नहीं करते? वो तो देखें, एक तो शॉर्ट टर्म रिस्क है ना कि मैं अपनी फाइनेंशियल स्ट्रेटजी में या अपनी प्राइसिंग स्ट्रेटजी में या मैं अपने सप्लाई चेन की स्ट्रेटजी में बिल्ड करूँ, वो कितने के लिए, एक महीने के लिए होगी, कुछ चंद शॉर्ट टर्म ही होगा ना, 1-2 साल के लिए होगी स्ट्रेटजी। हाउ अबाउट द लॉन्ग टर्म? आई स्विच फ्रॉम द ब्रिक एंड mortar एंड ओल्ड वेज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस टू न्यू वेज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस। ये सवाल है मेरा।
Let me first comment on the conspiracy theory, and then I'll come to AI
Sure,
bubble, and then we'll
sure,
talk
sure.
about the future, right? So I think conspiracy theories have a role to play, and there should be a healthy amount of conspiracy theories, right? And if you were talking, and if you go even deeper about it, let me tell you that the word conspiracy theory was coined by a CIA official to discourage or discredit any possibility of contemplation that is against their own narrative. So when we question the narrative, but again, there should be a balance. We should not comply with the stated objectives or stated narrative what the governments are telling us. On the other extreme, we should also not be suspecting everything without any evidence, or should not assume anything without evidence, right? So we should have a middle path. There should be a healthy amount of conspiracy theories. So when we talk about when you say Trump's pressure or Trump's, there could be blackmailing tactic on Trump. So if you look at my thesis, I said it's a practical case for United States, for the United States economy, for the United States monetary system. It's an important thing for the United States global hegemony. To maintain that is important. On top of it, I would not disregard the conspiracy theory itself as well, because if I want to pressurize someone, I might as well use blackmail tactics on him as well. And people also talk about, people like Tigger Carlson talk about the fact that the President Trump's son-in-law is also very closely aligned with Prime Minister Netanyahu. So we do not know what kind of psychological and influences these leaders might have on each other. So I'm not ruling out anything, but I'm saying that there should be a healthy amount of conspiracies. Coming to AI bubble, let's first clarify what the bubble is. AI bubble is any bubble is basically when the companies get a valuation more than their earning capacity, right? This is nothing vague. It's very clear. And so when there was a dot-com AI bubble, a lot of companies used to have several million, several billion-dollar AI valuations, even though their earning capacity was very bad. And when that bubble burst, a lot of those companies went out of business, and only those who really had a very strong business case, very strong product, they survived and they became very big companies, probably the largest companies, right? Similarly, we are going through a period right now where the AI, even the top-notch AI LLMs such as OpenAI are in heavy losses, even though their valuations are exorbitant. And the reason is because so far they have not reached a point where they can significantly substitute humans. And so what they're offering is at a very cheap price. And whatever the price they are charging is not adequate to cover their expenses, to cover their capital expenditure, but they have to keep incurring that expenditure to keep improving to make sure that they reach a point where they can substantially impact the way the work is done around the world. And so right now, they are in kind of a trouble. And imagine the demand of chip companies is also primarily due to these AI companies, which are themselves not making money, but they are paying these chip companies to buy these chips, expensive chips, and that's what made Nvidia a $5 billion company. So there are risks of a significant decline in their values. And there is very strong risk of a lot of AI companies going in, which have very strong valuations, going bankrupt. But because a lot of investors are very generous about investing in AI because they're expecting something to happen, but eventually a lot of these companies we will see will fail, and a lot of these companies will survive and grow bigger. And with the pace with which AI is improving right now, it seems almost inevitable as of now that they will replace work, they will gain an advantage over humans, and they will earn money in the future. But right now, there is an expectation or a bubble, and so this is the state we are in right now. Coming back to your initial question of what industry uh, would benefit from this war. So AI and technology companies would probably be immune from the effects of war, but not to a great extent, because a lot of services or a lot of companies themselves might be financially stressed and they might not want to try new automation or new technique. But if, let's say, there's this disruptive AI company or disruptive technology company that changes the way work is done and significantly reduces their hours or significantly reduces their expenses, then they will be more relevant in a time of financial distress. Um, yes, you comment on this.
Yeah, I understood your point, and I discuss these kind of things with a lot of people, including business owners, including CXOs. So actually, we always talk about conspiracies. I don't mind talking about conspiracies, but talking about conspiracies throughout the day in our daily lives and just conspiracy theories is a red flag for me. Like, likewise, I know about .com bubble, and I know there could be AI bubble as well. But just focusing on that or thinking that everything is bubble is not right. So my question stays, and let me enhance my question as well. कि हम जो है ना वो हमेशा कंस्पिरेसी थ्योरीज में रहते हैं और उससे निकल नहीं पाते हैं। हर चीज हमारे लिए कंस्पिरेसी होती है, हर चीज हर बात में कंस्पिरेसी होती है। आप किसी दुकान वाले से भी बात करें वो भी कंस्पिरेसी की बात करेगा, समझ रहे हैं? कि ठेले वाला होगा वो भी कंस्पिरेसी, कोई बैंकर होगा वो भी कंस्पिरेसी। तो ऐसा लगता है हर चीज जो है ना, द वर्ल्ड इज कंस्पायरिंग अबाउट एवरीथिंग। लाइकवाइज जो आपका एआई वाली चीजें वो भी लोगों को लगता है कि ये सब जो है ना झूठ है, फ्रॉड है, एआई कुछ नहीं होता। जैसे लगता था .com कुछ नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है, कुछ नहीं होने वाला, कोई चेंज। मैंने आपको बताया फॉर्च्यून 500 चेंज हो गई, इससे बड़ी क्या मिसाल मैं आपको दूं यार। और ये ऐसा है कि क्या सारी चीजें बबल था, क्या .com सारा बबल था? नहीं ना, कुछ चीजें बबल थी ना। ठीक है, उसमें बबल वाला एक्सपेक्ट भी था, एआई में भी इसी तरह से है। तो क्या हमें नजर नहीं आ रहा दुनिया चेंज? क्या मतलब ऐसा होता है दुनिया चेंज हो जाती है हमें बाद में पता चलता है? हमारे सामने चेंज हो रही होती है ना दुनिया। हम किसी हद तक उसको प्रेडिक्ट भी कर सकते हैं कि आगे दुनिया किस तरफ जा रही है, राइट? मेरा सवाल अब भी वही है, क्यों हम नहीं जाते जदीद वेज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस पे, इनोवेटिव बिजनेस पे, टेक्नोलॉजी पे, एआई पे? क्यों हम पुराने वाले स्टाइल को हम बहुत ज्यादा फोकस करते हैं? सवाल अब भी वही है, ऐसा क्या है? हम क्यों सिर्फ हमेशा नेगेटिव सोचते हैं? क्यों सिर्फ हमेशा हम कंस्पिरेसी की बात करते हैं? यही सवाल है। मैं एक्चुअली ये मेरे जहन में सवालात हैं जो मैं सामने रख रहा हूँ। एक्चुअली आई हैव टू फाइंड आंसर्स टू दीज एज वेल ना। असल मसला तो यही है ना। देखिए, मैं आपको शुरू से कहा कि मेरे पास आंसर्स नहीं होंगे, बट मेरे पास बहुत सारे सवालात हैं। ये सवालात क्या जरूरी हैं? आपको लगता है कि ये सवालात बोर्ड लेवल पे होने चाहिए, ये सवालात सीईओ को करने चाहिए, ये सवालात कंट्री में जो फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर है उसको करने चाहिए, प्राइम मिनिस्टर को करने चाहिए? आर दीस क्वेश्चंस रेलेवेंट, या मैं कोई अहमक आदमी हूँ जो इस तरह के सवालात कर रहा हूँ?
I think you have raised a very important question, and one of the very strong psychological forces behind embracing conspiracy theories is basically blame shifting. Nobody wants blame on themselves. Nobody wants that we are failure, we are not doing what we are supposed to do, we are not progressing the way we are supposed to progress, and therefore we find a way to shift the blame. And therefore, you, in a certain kind of people, you find a tendency to cite everything or associate everything with conspiracy theories. So this is happening because they are doing this, they are doing this. Okay, they are doing something, whatever. But how you are defending yourself, how you're progressing, how you're reacting to those things. What are your strategies? What are your moves? What are your procedures? And so this very strong psychological tendency to shift the blame on someone else is, I think, what causes people to dwell in conspiracy theories. And no matter what we want, a lot of people would stay like that. A lot of people would want to shift the blames. I'm sorry, I forgot your second question.
नहीं, मैं वही सवाल है कि हम जो है ना हमेशा जो नेगेटिव या दूसरों की जो चीज़ें होती है ना, ये बबल्स हैं, कंस्पिरेसीज हैं, मुझे प्रॉब्लम नहीं है कि हम कंस्पिरेसी थ्योरी पे भी बात करें या बबल्स को भी सोचें, लेकिन हर वक्त हर बंदा, मैं लिटरली आपको बता रहा हूँ, ऑफिस में हो या कहीं पे भी हो, हर बंदे के जहन में सिर्फ और सिर्फ कंस्पिरेसी थ्योरी होती है। आप समझ रहे हैं मेरी बात को? तो इस ये माइंडसेट से मैं कैसे निकलूं? हमें हर चीज में ना नेगेटिव साइड ही नजर आती है। आप समझ रहे हैं? पॉजिटिव साइड नहीं देख पाते आप। हम ये नहीं सोचते कि हमें भी उस पर कोई स्टेप लेना चाहिए। ऐसा लग रहा है कि जैसे हम खुद उस दुनिया में रहते नहीं है, उस दुनिया को ना जैसे हम बाहर से देख रहे हैं और सिर्फ वो एक कहानी पढ़ रहे हैं और कहानी में कंस्पिरेसी स्टोरीज है। हम ये नहीं समझ रहे कि वो हमारी अपनी दुनिया। आपको बात समझ में आ रही है? हम
That's
दुनिया की
exactly my
कहानियों को ऐसे लेते हैं जैसे वो सिर्फ कहानियां हैं और उसके अंदर कंस्पिरेसी थ्योरीज हैं। तो मैं खुद भी तो पार्ट हूँ ना उस दुनिया का। खास तौर पे मैं पाकिस्तानी माइंडसेट की बात कर रहा हूँ। मे भी शायद पाकिस्तानी माइंडसेट इज नॉट जस्ट इन पाकिस्तान ना, शायद सेम माइंडसेट इंडिया में भी है, शायद
It's
सेम
global.
माइंडसेट
Humans are the same around the world. I think humans are the same around the world.
एग्जैक्टली, शायद हम में कुछ ज्यादा वो प्रॉब्लम है मे बी, जिसकी वजह से देखें ना कुछ और कंट्रीज हैं जो तरक्की कर रही हैं, इंक्लूडिंग इंडिया।
Because we have more blame to shift, and therefore,
Exactly.
and let me also connect with one more thing. Why we have more? Why people have blame shifting mentality? Because they have low agency. You know what agency is? The ability to do something on my own.
Okay.
The ability to do something on my own without being told to do something, thinking something, telling something, and doing it and making it a reality. That is called agency. If I have low agency, I would have a high blame shifting mentality, and then I will dwell more on conspiracy theories. And because I have low agency, I would be more. I would not be proactive. I would be reactive, and therefore I would go into that vicious cycle which you're talking about. As CXOs, we should think proactively as to what the direction of my company should be, of my business should be, and what should the strategic decision that I should take now to be in a more comfortable situation in the future.
अच्छा, एक सवाल आया
हाँ,
इफ यू अलाउ मी, मैं एक दो सवाल लेता हूँ। आमिर बशीर साहब हैं। अक्सर आमिर साहब, सबसे पहले तो आपका बहुत शुक्रिया। मैंने देखा है हमारे जब भी कोई शोज, कोई इवेंट्स होते हैं या इवेंट पोस्ट होती है ना, तो आप काफ़ी पॉजिटिवली इंगेज करते हैं। थैंक यू फॉर दैट। तो आमिर बशीर साहब लिंक्डइन पे हमारे एक बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग कनेक्शन है। उनका दो सवाल पूछे इन्होंने। पहला सवाल पूछा, हाउ डू यू सी UAE आफ्टर दिस क्राइसिस। मैं दूसरा सवाल भी साथ ही स्क्रीन पे ले लेता हूँ, इसी से रिलेटेड है। वो है, हाउ डू यू सी गल्फ रीजन आफ्टर दिस क्राइसिस। सो जैसे ही ये क्राइसिस इनके जहन में है कि जैसे ही क्राइसिस खत्म होगा, आफ्टर के क्राइसिस का मतलब तो यही है, तो आप कैसे देखते हैं गल्फ रीजन को? इमाद, ओवर टू यू।
I would pray that this crisis does not result in any civil war in the Gulf region. This does not result in any civil war in Iran. This does not result in any toppling government in any country in the region, because that would be disastrous for the region, and that would be disastrous for all of us. And so let's hope and pray that the governments remain intact, the Gulf region does not engage into the war, and the governments, because unlike Iran, the governments in the Gulf region are easier to topple. So if, for example, there's a type of war between different global powers and they want to topple the government, that would be easier in the Gulf region, and we should hope and pray that it doesn't happen and it remains disengaged from the entire crisis. But if the crisis prolongs beyond 2 or 3 months, I think the players would lose restraint and they would somehow engage in this conflict, and this might be risky for the entire region. So if, let's say, they do not engage in the conflict at all, they would be winners. They would survive this conflict without losing much. But if they small engage, then they would open themselves to a lot of risk, a lot of possible interactions, a lot of possible forces that might ruin their country.
मैं अपना पर्सपेक्टिव दे देता हूँ थोड़ा सा, though I am not an expert on war or on this geopolitical situation, but मेरा ये मानना है कि जितनी जंग आपकी बढ़ेगी, दूर पकड़ेगी, जितना इसमें मज़ीद इजाफा होगा और तेल डलेगा, उतना ही ज़्यादा बुरा होगा गल्फ रीजन के लिए भी और दूसरी कंट्रीज़ के ऊपर भी जो कि उस गल्फ रीजन पे कहीं ना कहीं से डायरेक्टली या इनडायरेक्टली लिंक्ड है या कनेक्टेड है। सो मेरा ये ख्याल है कि जंग जितनी जल्दी ख़त्म हो जाए, ईरान के लिए भी अच्छा है, गल्फ रीजन के लिए भी अच्छा है। सो द थिंग इज़ के क्या गल्फ कंट्रीज़ खुद तैयार हैं कि इसको जल्द से जल्द ख़त्म किया जाए, या खुद जो है वो अब जो है वो कुछ बदला लेने के मूड में है, या कुछ वो सोच रहे हैं कि अच्छा अब हम भी आपको सबक सिखाएंगे। सो वो दिमाग क्या चल रहे हैं ना टॉप लीडरशिप के। आवाम तो देखें, आवाम के लिए तो हमेशा नुकसान ही होगा, बिजनेस के लिए हमेशा नुकसान होगा। कोई भी बिजनेस, कोई भी आवाम, कोई भी इंसान ये नहीं चाहेगा कि जंग हो, जंग धूल पकड़े, ठीक है, उसमें हमेशा से उसका नुकसान है, उसको डर भी लगा रहेगा। जो मेरी आज भी बात हुई है यूएई में, क्योंकि वन ऑफ द कंपनी रिप्रेजेंट उनके जो टॉप मैनेजमेंट है दे आर इन यूएई, तो वहाँ फ्लाइट्स भी बंद हैं, वहाँ पे ज़्यादातर बहुत सारी जगहों पे वर्क फ्रॉम होम है, और कुछ ऐसे एरियाज हैं जहाँ पे वो नज़र आ रहा है। तो मुझे किसी ने बताया कि मैंने अपने बैल्कनी से वीडियोस लिए हैं कि एक तरफ से जो है कोई मिसाइल या कोई ड्रोन है और दूसरी तरफ उसको इंटरसेप्ट किया जा रहा है। सो उनको ज़्यादा डर भी लगा हुआ है कि कभी भी ये कोई भी हमारे जो बैल्कनी के सामने हो रहा है वो हमारे बिल्डिंग पे भी आ सकता है। तो एक आप समझ रहे हैं, एक बड़ी ख़तरनाक सिचुएशन है बहुत सारे आवाम के लिए कि हम पे कब अटैक हो जाए, एक डर का माहौल भी है, ठीक है। फिर आपके कम्यूटेशन भी कम हो रही है और बहुत सारे वर्क फ्रॉम होम चल रहे हैं, तो जाहिर है कि ये सिचुएशन आवाम के लिए, बिजनेसेस के लिए तो ठीक नहीं है, ये बात तो तय है ना। अब सवाल ये है कि जो दोज इन पावर हैं वो उनके जहनों में क्या चल रहा है, उनका ये है कि इसको जल्द से ख़त्म किया जाए। तो हमेशा मुझे लगता है कि जब भी आपकी वॉर होती है उससे नुकसान ही होता है। सपोज अच्छा चलो बंद हो जाती है ये वॉर, उसके बाद क्या? मैं तो आपको बता रहा हूँ कि पिछले कम से कम 50 साल से, ये शायद ज़्यादा, मैंने तो हमेशा वॉर ही वॉर देखी है गल्फ रीजन में। मैंने आपको बातों बातों में बहुत सारी मिसालें दी, मुख्तलिफ कंट्रीज़ का बताया, इराक, कुवैत, लेबनान, आपका ये जो लीबिया, कौन सी ऐसी कंट्री बची है जिसमें किसी ना किसी या वॉर से रिलेटेड कोई चीज़ें ना हुई हो, ठीक है, या वो उसके इम्पैक्ट में ना हुआ हो। तो ये बार बार कब तक होता रहेगा? मेरा ये सवाल है जिसका शायद आंसर मेरे पास तो नहीं है कि कब तक चलेगा, कब हम जो है वो अकल के नाखून लेंगे, कब हमें समझ में आएगा कि हम ग्लोबल सिटीजन हैं। बातें तो देखें सब करते हैं ना, कोई इवेंट पे करते हैं, ग्लोबल सिटीजनशिप की बात करते हैं, डाइवर्सिटी की बात करते हैं, ह्यूमैनिटी की बात करते हैं, इतनी बड़े बड़े वो ह्यूमन राइट्स के वो ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस बनी हुई हैं, यूनाइटेड नेशंस बनी हुई हैं, लेकिन इनका रोल क्या है? यूनाइटेड नेशंस का क्या रोल है फॉर एग्जांपल, जस्ट टू स्पीक, या इस तरह ह्यूमन राइट्स वालों ने क्या, वो सिर्फ बातें ही करनी होती है ना, एहतजाज ही करने होते हैं, उसके अलावा क्या करते हैं? मेरे लिए तो ये एक मसला है ना, एज अ ह्यूमन, कि ये कब ठीक है, चीज़ें ठीक होंगी, और मैं क्यों एज आवाम के तौर पे या बिजनेसेस के तौर पे अपनी गवर्नमेंट को इन्फ्लुएंस नहीं कर सकता, इंक्लूडिंग इन यूएस। क्यों नहीं वो जो है वो अपने हमेशा से यही होता है, वो सिर्फ थोड़ा सा क्रिटिसिज्म आता है, कुछ मीडिया में रिपोर्ट्स आती है, हमेशा उनके जो भी लीडर आए हैं, चाहे वो रिपब्लिकन हो या डेमोक्रेट्स हो, हर दौर में यही है। आप बुश के दौर देख लीजिए, पहले जो वो सीनियर बुश था उसके देख लीजिए, जूनियर बुश के फिर 8 साल देख लीजिए, चलो एक डिफरेंट आ गया, ओबामा आ गया। ओबामा ने क्या किया? ओबामा से तो हम एक्सपेक्शन नहीं कर रहे थे। तो ये बाइडेन ने क्या कर लिया, ट्रम्प आगे भी आने वाला सदर हो जाएगा। मुझे तो नहीं लगता कि ये यूएस की कोई पॉलिसीज चेंज हो जाती है वॉर को लेकर। वो तो आप देखें, कोई भी आता है, चाहे वो डेमोक्रेट आए, रिपब्लिकन आए, वही चीज़ें चल रही होती हैं। तो मुझे तो एक चेंज देखना है ना दुनिया में, इंक्लूडिंग गल्फ रीजन में, वो चेंज मुझे नज़र ही नहीं आ रहा है। तो जब तक रियल चेंज नहीं आएगा तो किसी ना किसी तरह से इम्पैक्ट रहेगा, गल्फ में भी रहेगा और कंट्रीज में भी रहेगा। तो मैं शायद कुछ ज़्यादा वो इंसान हूँ जो शायद दुनिया को बदलना चाहता है या देखना चाहता है, एक अच्छी दुनिया, एक आइडियल, मैं शायद आइडियल वर्ल्ड में रहना चाहता हूँ। मुझे इस दुनिया में जन्नत चाहिए, मुझे पता है बन सकती है, लेकिन बहुत सारे लोग शायद मुझसे एग्री नहीं करेंगे, वो कहेंगे कि यार इस दुनिया में अगर जन्नत होनी थी तो अल्लाह ताला जन्नत नहीं बनाते हैं। मैं नहीं मानता, मैं समझता हूँ दुनिया भी हम जन्नत बना सकते हैं। मेरे नज़दीक तो यही दोज़ख और यही जन्नत है। आपका क्या व्यू है इसमें?
I would say why does it matter what you want?
Why?
Why
Sorry?
does it matter what you want?
Why does it matter?
Yeah.
Why shouldn't matter? भाई मैं तो कह रहा हूँ इंसानियत, मेरे लिए ये इंसान है ना, तो इंसानों की बनाई हुई दुनिया है ना, और इंसानों के लिए ठीक ना हो, इंसानों ने अपने लिए दुनिया जहन्नुम बना ली है, मैं ये बात कर रहा हूँ आपसे।
I
तो वो
totally
जो
understand what you're
जहन्नुम बना
saying.
रहा है वो
I
इसको जन्नत भी तो
totally,
बना सकता है ना।
I totally understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is that just because you want something, it won't become a reality.
नहीं, why do I want it ना, why is more important than what, why is important ना, हम we are humans and we have created a lot of problems for each other. ये wars भी उनमें से एक है ना। क्या इंसान को पता नहीं है कि जंग से हमेशा नुकसान होता है, जंग हमेशा तबाह करती है, जंग जलाता है, जंग जो है जान भी ले जाती है, इकोनॉमिक्स भी ले जाती है, भूख और एहतियाज दे के जाती है। सॉरी, मुझे एक वो वर्ड्स याद आ गई फ्रॉम साहिल लुधियानवी, जंग तो खुद एक मसला है, जंग क्या मसले का हल देगी, आग और खून आज उगलेगी, भूख और एहतियाज कल देगी। इसलिए शरीफ इंसानों, जंग टलती रहे तो बेहतर है, आप और हम सभी के आंगन में शमा जलती रहे तो बेहतर है।
Very well said, Shehzad. But still, I would say, why does it matter what you want? Because those people who are in power do not care. And you're saying that system can be good and we can have peace in the world. It's possible to create an ideal just society. Yes, that is possible, but that is when just people are in power. People who care about the people are in power. When people who are absolutely pedophiles, who are absolutely criminals, who are absolutely unjust, who have done crimes all their lives, who have betrayed people all their lives, when such people are in power, it doesn't matter what you want. The world would work the way it works. And if you really care about how the world should work, maybe you should have power yourself. And if you cannot, it doesn't matter what you want.
यस, तो अगर आपने मैंने इसमें बातों बातों में कहा था कि हम कितना इन्फ्लुएंस करते हैं एज पीपल, एज बिजनेसमैन, मैं वही बता रहा हूँ कि बिजनेसमैन अगर प्रेशर डालेगा तो जो दोज इन पावर है वो भी इम्पैक्ट होंगे, वो कहीं ना कहीं उनको वो डिसीजन मेकिंग में उसको देखेंगे। मैंने अपनी बातों में ये चीज़ कही थी और 2-3 दफ़ा मैंने फ्लो में कह गया था ये, तो मैं तो देखता हूँ, देखें हम नहीं चाहेंगे, हम चेंज करना खुद ही नहीं चाहेंगे, फिर चेंज नहीं आएगा। मेरे ख्याल से सिर्फ ये प्रॉब्लम होनी है, आई एब्सोल्युटली एग्री, जो आप बात कर रहे हैं वो है एब्सोल्यूट पावर करप्ट्स एब्सोल्युटली, राइट। जितना ज़्यादा पावर होगा उतना ज़्यादा करप्शन फैलेगी। और अगर मैं उसको अगर दीन की भी बात करूं, कुरान में भी है, जो फसाद फैलाने वाले मत बनो ना, ज़मीन में फसाद यानी करप्शन इन द वर्ल्ड। तो करप्शन इन द वर्ल्ड को खुदा भी बहुत डिसलाइक करता है, वो हमेशा फसाद के खिलाफ है ना, कोई भी दीन होगा वो फसाद के खिलाफ ही होगा, राइट। सो फसाद फैलाने वाले हैं ना, वो दोज इन पावर्स ही होते हैं हमेशा, जिनके पास एब्सोल्यूट पावर हो। लेकिन मैं कह रहा हूँ कि हम भी तो कुछ नहीं कर रहे होते ना, हम एज अ नेशन, मैं समझता हूँ हम भी बड़े एपेथेटिक हैं, हम भी जो है ना एक दूसरे पे से ब्लेम गेम्स में रहते हैं। आपने खुद ये बात बताई, एक माइंडसेट है हमारा, हम उससे ज़्यादा हम अपना रोल नहीं प्ले करते हैं। हम यही समझते हैं कि हमारे पास हमारे पावर्स में कुछ नहीं है, हम जो है ना बिल्कुल मतलब वही है ना कि हम जैसे एक मूवी के अंदर हैं लेकिन मूवी का पार्ट नहीं है, सब हम बस उसको देख रहे हैं, हमें सिर्फ कंस्पिरेसीज, हमें दूसरों पे ऊपर सब ये बुरा वो बुरा, ये गलत वो गलत। मजहब में भी ऐसा ही है, पॉलिटिक्स में भी ऐसा ही है, इकोनॉमिक्स में भी ऐसा ही है। हम जॉब भी करते हुए दूसरों को इल्ज़ाम देते हैं कि उसने काम गलत किया, उसने ठीक नहीं किया, उसने ठीक, ये हमेशा यही एक माइंडसेट बना होता है ना, अपने ऊपर हम नहीं देख रहे होते। मजहब में भी यही करते हैं, मजहब में भी हम जिस फ़िका को मानते हैं उस फ़िका के अलावा बाकी सबको हम समझते हैं कि वो तो मुसलमान ही नहीं है, वो तो काफिर है या वो तो जहन्नुमी है, सोचते ही नहीं सोचते। हमें से अक्सरियत मेरे ख्याल से यही सोचती है, दूसरों को गलत मानती है, ठीक है। मैं किसी पर्टिकुलर की बात नहीं करना चाह रहा। इसी तरह सॉरी आपने कट कर दिया, तो आप बोल लें।
When you talk about the mindset, when you talk about mindset to blame other people and talk negatively, have you ever wondered why certain people have that kind of mindset more than the people? Now, again, if you really care what you want, if you really care to realize what you want, you should go into the details of why people are how they are, and maybe we should have psychological and social psychological analysis, and maybe simply not blame them for being bad. Maybe we should figure out why they are bad. And
no, I'm not blaming them.
20 and 30 years.
Actually, these are my questions.
Because it's very easy to constantly talk negatively about the people.
No, I'm not actually. No, actually, these are my questions, and actually, I am that person. Actually, ना, मैं खुद भी तो शामिल हूँ ना। मैं actually सवालात पूछ रहा हूँ, ये मैं एक सवालात पुट ऑन कर रहा हूँ जो actually मैं अपने आप से पूछता हूँ। आज स्क्रीन पे आए हैं तो मैं स्क्रीन पे ये सवालात पूछ रहा हूँ। मैं ऑलमोस्ट रोज ही डेली बेसिस पे अपने आप से ये सवालात पूछ रहा होता हूँ। ये मौका नहीं मिलता ना कि हम इस पे बात करें, इस पे क्वेश्चन पूछे जाएं। इस टॉपिक पे तो हम वैसे ही बात नहीं करते हैं। थैंक्स टू यू जो आपने प्रपोज किया, अदरवाइज मैं शायद इस टॉपिक पे बात नहीं करता। मैं सोचता कि यार बीइंग एन अकाउंटेंट या CFO, मैं क्यों इस टॉपिक पे बात करूं, मैं तो शायद इस सोच में रहता ना। आपने मुझे एंगेज किया तो मैं आज एंगेज हुआ ना। ये आपने मुझसे ये बातें पहले तो कभी नहीं सुनी थी, या एटलीस्ट एक दुक्का लोग जो क्लोज सर्कल में होंगे वो उन्होंने बात सुनी होगी। लिंक्डइन पे, यूट्यूब पे तो किसी ने मुझे इन बातों पे नहीं देखा होगा ना। तो ये तो अंदर की बातें आज सामने आ रही है ना। तो मेरे तो ये क्वेश्चन से अपने आप के ऊपर भी हैं, विच मीन्स हम कुछ ऐसे कंडीशंस में हैं, कंडीशनिंग हुई हुई है हमारी माइंडसेट की, जिसकी वजह से हम ऐसे हैं। जो ये बिहेवियर है इज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ आवर प्रीवियस कंडीशनिंग और ब्रेन वॉशिंग और ब्रेन ट्रेनिंग। ठीक है, तो हम ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ टाइम, और दूसरा ये कि जब हम ऐसे हालात से गुजरते हैं, मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ ना, मैं बचपन से जंग देखता आ रहा हूँ और आइंदा भी देखूंगा। ये कल को बंद हो जाएगी, चलो ईरान ये आपकी बंद हो जाएगी, फिर दोबारा कोई वॉर ब्रेकआउट होगी, दोबारा ईरान होगा। लेकिन ये चीजें तो चलती आ रही है ना। अच्छा, मेरे पेरेंट्स ने तो वो देखी है, World War II देखी है। मेरे दोनों पेरेंट्स जो थे वो दोनों इंडिया में थे और दोनों देख चुके हैं World War II। ठीक है, और हम जो बातें कर रहे हैं कि हमने दुनिया देखी, ये देखी, भाई जो हमारे पेरेंट्स ने देखी वो तो उन्होंने तो सब कुछ देखा है। हम बात कर रहे हैं कि मिलेनियम ने ये देखा, मिलेनियम, भाई मिलेनियम से ज्यादा तो हमारे पेरेंट्स ने देखा है ना। हमने तो World War II नहीं देखी ना, हमने तो वो पाकिस्तान बनते हुए नहीं देखा ना। वो भी तो एक कंडीशन थी ना, लाखों लोग मारे गए थे, हिंदू भी मुसलमान भी, लाखों हिंदू लाखों मुसलमान। ये जब माइग्रेशन हुई थी, ये माइग्रेशन पिछली सदी का सबसे बड़ा सानिया था। इतनी बड़ी जो कत्ल है वो वॉर में भी नहीं हुए जितने पाकिस्तान इंडिया में ये माइग्रेशन के वक्त जो लोगों की डेथ हुई है। डेथ टोल सबसे ज्यादा था, वॉर में भी इतना नहीं था। तो उन्होंने तो वो देखा, इस तरह और भी बहुत कुछ देखा। उन्होंने 65 की वॉर देखी, 71 की वॉर देखी, और बहुत कुछ देखा। मैं कह रहा हूँ कि यार ये चीज़ सिलसिला तो चलता ही रहेगा ना। हम हमेशा बात भी करते हैं तो शॉर्ट टर्मिज्म पे बात करते हैं ना। हम अगर सोल्यूशन पे भी बात कर लेंगे, यार हमारी गवर्नमेंट भी बात कर लेगी, तो क्या सोल्यूशन पे बात करेगी? वो यही बात करेगी ना कि एफिशिएंट यूज ऑफ ऑयल एंड फ्यूल फॉर द टाइम बीइंग, के जब ये मसला सेटल नहीं हो जाता। हो सकता है हम कहेंगे हमारे पास फ्यूल ही नहीं है तो कम्यूटेशन बंद कर दो, ट्रांसपोर्टेशन बंद कर दो, जैसे कोविड में की थी, आप घर से काम करें। एक हाईली लाइकली ये सिचुएशन भी हो सकती है ना। एक बता रहा हूँ कि ये सिचुएशन भी आ सकती है। जब फ्यूल नहीं होगा तो क्या करेंगे? हमारी गाड़ियाँ तो नहीं चलेंगी, इंडस्ट्रीज नहीं चलेंगी, तो क्या करेंगे? बहरहाल मैं आ रहा हूँ कि हमने कभी फ्यूचर को लेके माइंडसेट पे बात नहीं की है। अच्छा, सवाल ये है फिर आपका, मुझसे ये सवाल होना चाहिए आपका, या मेरा अपने आप से ये सवाल होना चाहिए कि इसका हल क्या है, ये चीज़ें ठीक कैसे होंगी। यही है ना कि क्यों ऐसा है। मैं समझता हूँ मेंटल कंडीशनिंग है। तो मेंटल कंडीशनिंग एक दिन में तो नहीं हुई है ना, इस पे तो ईयर्स हमने लगाए हैं इस मेंटल कंडीशनिंग पे। ये अगेन मेरा एक अपने ऊपर से सवाल भी है जिसका मैं सोच रहा हूँ पॉसिबल आंसर्स। दिस इज नॉट द एब्सोल्यूट राइट आंसर आई एम गिविंग, ये थॉट प्रोसेस मैं आपको एक्सप्लेन कर रहा हूँ। तो अगर ये मेरी कोई मेंटल कंडीशनिंग ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ ईयर्स हुई है, तो इसको ठीक करने के लिए भी मुझे एक लॉन्ग टर्म एक स्ट्रेटेजी, लॉन्ग टर्म प्लानिंग, लॉन्ग टर्म एजुकेशन, मे बी दिस काइंड ऑफ ये जैसे हम टॉक कर रहे हैं, ये भी ज़रूरी है मेरे हिसाब से। क्योंकि जब हम सोचेंगे और कलेक्टिवली सोचेंगे, मेरे हिसाब से एक बहुत ज़रूरी चीज़ हम सब में है कि हम हर डिसीजन, हर बात से पहले भी क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग को ले आए। What I miss in my behavior as well as in society's behavior is missing critical thinking. Sorry, मैं यहाँ पे स्टॉप करूँगा, आपका व्यू आ जाए, then I can add on further.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I just wanted to just make you note that you're talking about critical thinking, and I want to talk about it offline sometime, right? And secondly, your point was very valid about conditioning. And I think there have been some researches in certain villages in Africa where there used to be a lot of violence. And because of that constant violence, their creativity had gone down, their fear had gone up, they were pretty much hopeless. And let me also give you another example. There has also been an experiment on some monkeys. And so in that particular setting, there was a room where 4 or 5 monkeys were inside the room. And inside the room was a ladder. And above the ladder was a bunch of bananas, right? A monkey could go and have a banana. But every time a monkey would go, cold water would shower over all the monkeys. So one monkey tried, and the cold water showered, and he had to come back. Another monkey tried cold water shower and had to come back. Another monkey tried, and so it happened 3 or 4 times. After that, monkeys stopped trying to get bananas. Right? Even though they were in their reach, they stopped trying to get the bananas. And after that, every time a monkey would go up, every time a monkey would move up, other monkeys would beat him down. And so eventually, what the researchers did was they started changing monkeys. They took one monkey out of the room and replaced it with a new monkey. So the new monkey had never seen the water coming down. But when the new monkey tried to go up, other monkeys beat him and bring it down, bring him back again. And so eventually, gradually, the researchers changed all the monkeys, and at the end of the day, all the monkeys in the room were new monkeys who had never seen the water showering down. And every time that those monkeys tried to go up, the other monkeys beat them and brought them down, even though there was no water coming in. So even though the water has ceased to come, they have been mentally conditioned to think that they can never reach the bananas. And that's how conditioning happens. That's how strong conditioning is. And if you look at the third world countries, the conditioning is very strong because every time we see a person succeeding who has been breaking the laws or breaching or violating rules, you start to build certainly start to build a belief, a very strong belief that to be successful or to go up the ladder, you have to break the rules, you have to violate the laws. And so once that kind of conditioning gets into the mind, sits deep into the mind, it's very hard to break out of that conditioning. And so imagine a society where people who break the law eventually get punished, and so they cannot even think of breaking the law because they will be punished. So this is how important conditioning is, because it completely changes your belief system of what you believe would make you succeed and how you should behave and how you should not behave. And I don't think this is a coincidence that the world we live in is so unjust. I think there's a power structure from top to bottom. So there are global elite who are corrupt, which makes them the individual national elites corrupt, and those national elites are corrupt, which make the lower people corrupt. And so I think the corruption comes top to bottom because the power of the force of pressure from top is easier to exert, and it's very hard to push the pressure back up because people are conditioned, people are hopeless, people are fearful, and so it's very hard to stimulate a positive change that goes up to the top rather than coming from the top to the bottom. But eventually, whenever that change would happen, it would happen that way.
यस स्पॉट ऑन कंडीशनिंग की ही एक्चुअली बात है ना, लेकिन उसको हमें कभी ना कभी तो ठीक करना पड़ेगा ना. बट यू आर स्पॉट ऑन कि जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल आपकी पनिशमेंट है. अब हमारे यहाँ कोई भी शख्स अपनी, अगर वो अमीर आदमी है और अपनी लैंड क्रूजर से वो किसी को उड़ा दे, इंसानी जाने ले ले वो, तो वो हमें पता है कि वो निकल जाता है. हमारा लीगल सिस्टम उसको सपोर्ट करता है, वो कुछ पैसे देता है, इवन उनको भी दे देता है जो मजलूम के जो लवाहिकीन होते हैं, जो मकतूलीन हैं, उनके जो लवाहिकीन हैं, उनको भी पैसे दे दिए, तो वो तो निकल जाता है ना. अब ये चीज़ें हम बार बार देख रहे हैं, तो हमारी मेंटल कंडीशन हो गई ना कि अगर आपके पास पैसा है, पावर है, तो आप कुछ भी कर सकते हैं. तो ये आपने एक थिंकिंग डाल दी ना लोगों के जहनों में, और ये थिंकिंग आपके सिस्टम ने डाली है. तो जो बंदा जो उससे नहीं भी गुजरा, उसके जहन में भी कहीं ना कहीं है कि एस्केप मौजूद है. तो जो अमीर बाप की जो बिगड़ी हुई औलाद है, उसको फिर वो केयरलेस हो जाती है, वो शराब के नशे में गाड़ियाँ चलाती है, ठीक है, और उनको पता है कि वहाँ पे कुछ भी हो जाए, कोई पूछने वाला है नहीं, और कुछ हो भी गया तो हमें एस्केप मिल जाएगा. ऐसे बहुत सारे हमें जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट के या हाई कोर्ट के जजेस हैं, उनके बच्चों के भी हमें वाक़यात देखने को मिले ना. ये बार आती रहती है इस तरह की चीज़ें. लेकिन लाइकवाइज अगर किसी गरीब का कोई बच्चा गटर में गिर जाता है तो उसका कोई पुरसान हाल नहीं होता, ये भी हमें पता है. तो ये अगेन ये भी तो कंडीशनिंग है ना. तो कमिंग टू द वॉर्स में भी तो कंडीशनिंग है ना, कि बार उसी टाइप की वॉर्स होती हैं, उसी टाइप की चीज़ें होती हैं. हमें पता चलता है कि ईरान है, वो कहाँ उसके पास इतने पावर्स या उतनी चीज़ें हैं ना, वो एटॉमिक पावर है. मैंने तो नहीं कहा, वो अमेरिका भी पता है, सबको पता है, तो उसके पास है ही नहीं एटॉमिक टेक्नोलॉजी, उसी पे अटैक होता है. नॉर्थ कोरिया पे क्यों नहीं करते हैं? नॉर्थ कोरिया के पास तो है एटॉमिक टेक्नोलॉजी, लेकिन वहाँ पे ऑयल भी नहीं है और वहाँ पे एटॉमिक टेक्नोलॉजी भी नहीं है. कोई बंदा वो तो इंतजार में है कि कोई आओ हमसे लड़े. वो उसके बेचारे तो मीम बनते हैं. जो उसका जो लीडर है नॉर्थ कोरिया का, आपने भी देखे होंगे वो तो इंतजार में यार कि कोई दुनिया में कोई तो हो जो हमें चैलेंज करे, हम तो जंग के लिए तैयार बैठे हैं, कोई हमसे जंग करता ही नहीं है। तो ये भी तो सिचुएशन है ना, तो अगेन ये भी तो मेंटल कंडीशनिंग ही है ना, आप समझ रहे हैं। इसी तरह ये जो चीजें हैं जिसमें जिसमें आपने की बात, ये जो थ्योरीज होती हैं, कंस्पिरेसी थ्योरीज क्या मैं और आप क्रिएट करते हैं क्या? ये कहाँ से आती है कंस्पिरेसी थ्योरीज? ये भी तो कहीं मेन स्ट्रीम मीडिया से ही आती है ना। तो इसका मतलब हमारे जहनों में वो कंस्पिरेसी थ्योरी मीडिया दे रहा है ना। जो पावरफुल मीडिया होगा वो हमारे पास ज़्यादा एक्सेस में होगा, राइट। इसका मतलब है कि जो हमारी और आपकी सोच है, इवन जो हम जो वेबिनार में आज जो बातें कर रहे हैं, वो कहीं ना कहीं हम भी किसी मेंटल कंडीशन में हैं। जो हमने जो बातें सुनी, देखी, आपने वीडियोस देखे, मैंने देखे, सुने, कहीं ना कहीं वो चीज़ें हमने अपना हमारी सोच में भी आ गई ना, तो हम भी किसी ना किसी तरह से बायस्ड हैं, फॉर्चुनेटली और अनफॉर्चुनेटली, आई डोंट नो। ये एक सवाल है एक्चुअली जो मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ कि कहीं ना कहीं हम भी मेंटल कंडीशन के शिकार हैं, हम भी कहीं ना कहीं पॉजिटिवली या नेगेटिवली इन्फ्लुएंस्ड हैं। हमारे जहनों में भी वो कंस्पिरेसी थ्योरीज हैं, कहीं ना कहीं से आई हैं मेन स्ट्रीम मीडिया से। उसमें एक वो मेंटल कंडीशनिंग भी शामिल है जो हमें मदरसों या स्कूल में मिली है बचपन में। जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल स्कूल में हमें टीचर, एटलीस्ट मेरे टीचर तो मना करते थे सवाल करने से, रोकते थे सवाल करने से। अच्छा आपको पता है मैं कुरान शरीफ पढ़ता था तो मुझे टीचर्स कहते थे कि बेटा खुद से कुरान नहीं पढ़ो, बहक जाओगे। तो जो मुझे सुनाया गया, मुझे बाद में दोस्त भी कहते थे यार तुम कैसे आदमी हो, तुम कुरान पढ़ते हो, कुरान कैसे पढ़ सकते हैं यार, कुरान कोई हमारे पढ़ने के लिए है, कुरान पढ़ोगे तो बहक जाओगे, ये बातें करते थे। आप समझ रहे हैं, ये मेंटल कंडीशनिंग थी ना, ये हमारी पूरी कौम की कंडीशनिंग है। वो समझते हैं कुरान हमारे पढ़ने के लिए नहीं है, समझने के लिए नहीं है, ये कंडीशनिंग है ना भाई। उनको लगता है कि कुरान पढ़ोगे तो बहक जाओगे क्योंकि कुरान आपको समझ में नहीं आएगा। कुरान के वो समझते हैं कि पर्टिकुलर एक लोग हैं जिनको आपने आउटसोर्स करना है। आप समझ रहे मेरी बात? जैसे हमारे अकाउंटिंग की फील्ड होती है ना, तो वो कहते हैं कि हम चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट या किसी बिग फोर को आउटसोर्स करेंगे ना, ऐसे कुरान को भी वो समझते हैं कि उसको आउटसोर्स करना होता है किसी को, खुद नहीं पढ़ना होता। अब ये क्या चीज़ है? खैर ये इस टॉपिक पे मैं मजीद बात करूंगा। मैं चाहूंगा कि हम आगे के भी जो हमारे सेशंस हो, हमने 1.5 घंटे से भी ज़्यादा लगा दिया है, हालांकि हमारा टारगेट 1 घंटे का था। तो ये कुछ ओपन क्वेश्चंस के साथ जाते हैं। जरूरत तो नहीं है कि हम
if you allow me,
जवाब
if you allow me,
Just
if you allow
please,
me,
please,
just let me
please,
comment
please.
for
मैं
3
डेफिनेटली
minutes.
आ रहा था, मैं आपको अलाउ करूंगा, मैं क्लोज नहीं करने वाला। तो मैं आपके फाइनल व्यूज लूंगा और मैं चाहूंगा कि इसको आइंदा भी हम कंटिन्यू करें। बट मेरे पास बहुत सारे सवाल आते हैं, मेरे पास जवाब नहीं है अनफॉर्चुनेटली।
So when you talk about mental conditioning, this is not the only risk that we have. And of course we are, everyone is. The last thing a fish sees is water. The last thing a fish notices is water, right? So because and this is not just about society's mental conditioning. A lot of people, what you believe and a lot of things, how you feel it, is encoded in you because how you were brought up in your childhood by your parents. So our upbringing from our parents also shape our thinking pattern, thinking mode. For example, let me give you a very simple example. In our household, the value of getting higher marks was very, very, very high. So if you get higher marks, you're a good person. If you don't get high marks, you're a bad child, right? And so the value associated with academic excellence was so much that it's hard for my mind to comprehend that academic excellence is not the end all and be all of being a good student or a good person as a young person. So the value, let's say your parents were very strict or very serious on certain matters, health matters, and were very lenient on some other matters, and some other household had were very careless about health issues, and so for them the value of health or health related precautions is very low. So this value judgments come from how your parents behave in your childhood. So no one can be completely free from conditioning in any way. Coming back to your question of independently interpreting in your scripture, right? So when we talk about independently interpreting the scripture, it's a two-edged sword. First of all, if you not independently interpret it, there's a risk that people would keep fooling you all your life. On the other hand, the other risk is that if you purely rely on your own interpretations, there's a huge risk that you have a very bad critical thinking, you have a very bad knowledge of what things are, and you keep making you keep jumping to wrong conclusions. So it's very important that you do read the knowledge, the scripture, but you also be very cautious about jumping to conclusions. And that's where I would like to end it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would love to have another session on skepticism, being is skeptical, and being too skeptical, or being not skeptical. You got the point. So actually, being accountants, we are too skeptical, and that is actually a problem and a risk. Although we think that we are risk averter, but actually we are at the same time we are taking a huge risk on being too critical, being too skeptical, right? So that's a topic for another day. We will also discuss on this topic. This is very relevant. And secondly, I would love to ask my audience whether we should invite guests into our podcast, and what do you think on our webinars. And actually, I'm being myself in these podcasts, and I discuss it with the bottom of my heart. So whatever I think, whatever questions I have, so I'm not I come unprepared and unscripted. So there is no script, there is no preparation. I don't know what question comes up next. I don't know what I'm going to say about anything. So I'm just being myself. So do you like being myself? And these, do you appreciate these kind of discussions? If not, I would love to have a presentation-based podcast or webinar, and we just talk about few things in a certain manner. So I'm not sure. I would love to have feedback from the audience. Uh, so that's it for today. This is me, and if any last comment by Imad, I would love to have that. After that, I would say goodbye to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Shehzad. I would just like to comment on being yourself. I think you are, that's what brings energy to this podcast. You're being yourself. I'm being myself. We have not prepared. We have not scripted this podcast in any way. And if you're just reading a script, that's what basically I do in my other podcast for IFRs, where I have to prepare for what content would be delivered. But that's what it's like, because that podcast is expected to be boring, and only people who really need it would want to watch it. But this podcast has to be energetic. It has to be exciting. It has to be funny. And so maybe we should keep improvising the way we are doing, but obviously audience feedback is more than welcome. Any final thing on this, Shehzad?
Yeah. Thank you very much. With that, let's end up this. And I would love to have, as I said earlier, comments and feedback from the audience. Please comment. Please provide feedback here, publicly, privately, DM, WhatsApp text, call, anything. I would love to have your feedback. And also give a feedback whether we should have it in one language, say English, or Urdu, or Minglish, little bit of Urdu, little bit of English. So whatever you want, so we can adapt. And we are also learning from you actually, and we are also learning from our own streaming experience as well. So that's it. Thank you very much, everyone. This is Shehzad Dhedhi. Thank you, Imad, for joining me today. Allah
Thank you,
Hafiz.
everyone. Thank you, Shehzad. Allah Hafiz. Islam.